Right, that's it. All right, so we're on lesson 10. It's the last lesson before Christmas and everything. And um, we've we've been doing all of the cityscapes and things, and I've sort of gone indoors with the cityscapes and I've been painting this bar, which you would have seen me do last week. Uh, the video for that is still, oh, there's Sue. The video for that is still to go on. So, because I wasn't too well last week, so I'll put that on for everyone after this session tonight. Oops. And I'll just mute. There we go. So we're going to continue working on our paintings. So if you chose to work on a canvas, obviously keep going with that. I'm going to work into the painting that I did last week. It looked like I'd almost finished it, but I did sort of want to add in some more colour into the picture as well and work into the abstract sort of blurred background too. So we'll have a look at that in a few seconds. I put on the studio wall some pictures that use a lot of texture and also brushstroke marks as well, which I've been talking about a little bit over the last few weeks, and you've watched me do some of that after I finished the figure. So we'll have a look at some of those because that might inspire and give some ideas about how you can develop the backgrounds and various areas of texture in your work. So we'll have a look at that over here on the studio. Okay, so here are some paintings that I haven't shown before, but they give you some ideas perhaps, and they give me a few ideas about how I might be able to develop the work that I'm doing. So you know that I've worked from a photograph, from the photographs that I've supplied everybody to have a look at. So I'm going to keep doing that, but I particularly like these ones over here. The first picture is, let me just see if I've got the right one here, is by somebody called Michael Floor, and I really love the vivid colours in here, but also the way that the brush strokes have been used towards the back as well. So, and there's lots of vivid colour in here as well, and I've used mostly a chromatic sort of monochromatic picture. And then painted it in mainly these purples. So I'm going to introduce some more colours into my work this week in order to sort of just explore what can happen with the pictures after I've painted the majority of it. So look at that one. And the next one is by somebody called Karen Hollowell. And you'll know that I really like putting a little bit of texture into my work and things. So on here, I mean, I don't know much about this artist's work at all, but looking at it here, we can see that there's lots of different kind of mark making going on here. So up in the top corner, we've got the green area has been almost like scratched through, and then we've got little bits of collage going over the top there. And then we've got these kind of mottled mark making techniques in the center too. So it's much more of a collage mixed media piece, which really appeals to the way that I work generally. But I thought it'd be quite nice to show you that, perhaps to give you a few ideas about how you might approach developing your own ideas. So I just thought I'd put that on there for you. And then the last two are on a similar sort of ilk, if you like. I don't have the names for these this particular artist, but you can see again how this is quite interesting, how you've got the sharpness of the girl in the foreground and perhaps the waiter or the barman, and then some of the brush strokes are actually kind of almost coming across and over the top of them. So that atmosphere that we've been talking about, that atmospheric perspective, is kind of almost enclosing the figures and drawing your attention. So the idea with a lot of these mark making techniques and the dark shadows and the fuzzy sort of backgrounds is to draw the eye into a certain part of the image that you want your viewer to focus on, or you want the people who look at your work to focus on. The chap in the center here, he's got the more mottled marks, the looser marks, and then in the background we've got this structure, so larger areas of colour. So you're drawn into the centre by the tone perhaps around his hat and his clothes, but also the texture that's been applied on top. So I'm going to be exploring that a little bit more on my piece. So we'll go over to me. Hello. And over here then we've got the painting that you would have seen me do last week. So I made it quite, you'll remember that I was very loose to begin with, the way that I worked on here, and then last week I spent most of the lesson refining the details, and that's to make this much sharper in the foreground, but also you've got the really deep shadows and the detail on the face. So obviously that detail is going to draw the attention. This area is probably the area that I've worked into the most. But we've got this effect of the light that you can see in the photograph by layering, first of all, some colour underneath, some purples, but then adding more white brush strokes back over the top in this horizontal and vertical sort of fashion. And then if we go back over here again, look, you can see that I've been if you remember, I used a palette knife to scrape some of the colour on. So I'm looking at some of that texture that the painting by Karen Hollowell that we just looked at, the saxophonist. I'm doing more sort of marks like that towards the back. So you've got a really clear distinction between what goes on the face, what goes on in the background. The colours hold it all together at this stage, but I'm hoping that I can introduce some more variation in the colour. And I really kind of fancy putting some greens in the background as well as refining some of the brush strokes on there. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. So remember that idea about atmospheric perspective that we've talked about. So the darker shadows and things in the foreground, the paler, more blurred marks towards the background. So you've got this difference between the two subjects which draw your attention. And I worked very quickly on the background when I did it. You can see here the chair, look, I just literally put in 2 very quick brush strokes on there. And you can see that there's a lot more to do because that chair obviously doesn't look like that one at the moment at all, but I can put a little bit of shadow on there. I can chop bits off with some of the darker tones and so forth. So I'll be doing that today, and I'm going to push it. I'm going to push it a bit further than maybe you'd expect, because a lot of people said to me in lesson today, oh, that's it, you don't need to do any more to this. And maybe they're right, but I think in the spirit of experimentation and trying things out, I'm gonna push it with a few colours and so forth today. All right. If you've got a canvas, you may also decide to paint along here as well. If you've got a wide one particularly, so you could extend the colours around the edge, and that's often something that artists do, so that it can just be hung as it is on the wall. So you may want to try that out too. Okay, so yeah, we're going to try a few of those things today. So I hope everyone's happy with what they're doing at the moment. And if you want to show me what you've been doing, please do, as I always say, and I will give you a little bit more help and so forth. So this is what I'm going to take a lot of inspiration from here, and the other one that I showed you a minute ago, which is, I'll bring that up in a few seconds, but there we go. So again, a very quick introduction, but I hope that everybody looks like everyone's already going anyway. That's good.
Okay, so you can see me here starting to take some influence from the painting from that you can see up there on the left hand side. So as you may be aware, orange and blue are opposite colours to each other, but the purple on here is more in harmony with the orange. Although yellow, of course, which it is kind of a yellowy orange we've got on here, is an opposite colour to the purple. So or the violet, if you want to call it a violet. So the colours here are starting to bring some contrast in colour, because we're using these complementaries over each other to create some more energy within the picture as well. And I build up these colours gradually, but as we progress a little bit further, what I end up doing is actually mixing some of the colours as well. So for instance, that blue that you can see that I put in there, which is a cerulean blue, ends up getting mixed in a little bit with the cadmium yellow and orange that I use, so we end up with this really nice kind of turquoise colour. Now I've slowed down the video a little bit here. One of my students just requested to be able to see what I'm doing in a little bit more of a slow sort of time, if you see what I mean. So that's why I've just given it a few minutes working at this pace. So I took the idea from the painting over there on the left, that you can see. We've got these nice warm colours on one side of the saxophone chap over there, and on the other side we've got these bolder, more vivid colours. So I wanted to try that out. I didn't have an exact plan, but once you get going, in other words, once you put down a few colours and take a couple of risks, then, and you do it in a way that is calculated, or you've thought just a little bit about the colours, then you can start to change the picture that you've been working on quite dramatically. So obviously in this case, and this is what I suggest you do if you've done a monochromatic picture, which is what this one was, which was just the violets and the shadows and things and the whites on here, or purple if you want to call it that. Once you've got a painting like that, you can start to introduce some other ideas into the painting. So and this is what I suggest you do, is take do a bit of research. I found this picture on Pinterest, and I've taken those colours there as a little bit of an indication of what's possible with a painting that has some purples and things. You can see the purples are kind of, and blues are appearing across the picture. But once you start adding in some other colours, you can see what the possibilities are, and that's exactly what's happened with this painting this evening. So from a monochromatic picture into a chromatic picture by introducing just a couple more colours on top. And you can go a bit further. You can see the painting goes a little bit further up there on the left. We've got some greens and things in there, and there's some green or turquoise colours do start to appear, but I decide not to go down quite as much of a route as that as in the picture. Now a lot of people thought that, oh gosh, why not just leave the picture as it is? And yes, I could do that, but knowing that if you create more layers of colour and texture and mark making back over the top, and we've spent a lot of time looking at mark making during this whole project, you know that for instance, when we looked at using charcoal and marks and stuff, you build up those layers of mark making and then you end up with a kind of much more richer result. So this is what I'm doing here is and somebody says, are you just sort of are you just kind of fiddling now? And yes, I am, particularly towards the end of this session in the evening, but I am also creating a more rich painting and a much more depth of mark making on here as well. So I'm kind of refining it as well as exploring what the possibilities are using the texture and colours and things as well. So I hope that you can take small steps to begin with. So just applying a little bit of colour, which is what I did on the shoulder up there with the orange. Apply a little bit of colour and then start to really work into, then you'll start to sort of think, okay, maybe this could work, and you start applying more colour into the image as well. So you'll see as we progress, and it will speed up in about a minute or so, you'll see how I continue working on all parts of the picture, particularly when I've put colour on most of it. I start to sort of flit around a little bit more, looking for things. So sometimes I might decide to look for areas of white or highlights in the image. Sometimes I might decide to improve the tone, or even when there's dark areas, or such as where the stool is near the man there, you might decide to, oh gosh, perhaps I could put in a little bit more mark making or texture there. And then you notice something else that you might want to add a bit more texture to. So as you can see here at the moment, I'm looking at just applying some areas of white to give contrast to the darker areas. So by doing that, and you'll see me add some highlights into the man and the hand and things a little bit later. But you start to sort of think, right, okay, I'm gonna really make this a bit more punchy by adding some whites, and then you might go even darker to increase the contrast in the image as well. So you can have a lot of fun just kind of exploring these things as you're working, and do it in a way that still gives you a little bit more control at the same time. So we're off again, going nice and quickly, and you can see me how I kind of go to different areas of the picture. So look, here I'm adding some darker tones, as I mentioned before. So there they all go. So I'm just putting in those darker tones there, all the way around. There's this poster, I think it's a poster actually of a bottle. It could be a real bottle at the back there, but you can't see it that clearly. That was that. And then I was quite interested here on creating this reflective surface on the bar that the man's leaning on just here. So you'll see how I gradually, because I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, and I refuse to sort of get too bogged down with the detail on here. So I just keep applying colour and tone and textures into that area, and eventually I get a little bit closer to where I want to be. I think the bit that kind of works for me towards the end there is putting some orange back over the top, because it creates the effect of a kind of a rich brown colour, but keep some of the highlights and reflections at the same time. So here, look, this floor is, if you look at the photo, it's kind of mostly just white. There's a bit of tone in there, but I try to add more interest to the floor by doing small dashes of colour, and then I actually put a little bit of yellow in there as well to draw attention to that area too. And then just to refine some of the taps at the back there, I add a bit of the cadmium yellow. And that's not to say that I'm trying to refine it so it's absolutely sharp as the man's suit. It's just to sort of loosen, just to sort of define and look closer at the details. You'll see, look, I just put two highlights on the taps, the beer taps. There's like a couple of black balls on there. And here now I'm adding some more details, because as I mentioned earlier today as well, the more you look at something, the more you kind of learn about it as you're working as well. So you spot things that you wouldn't necessarily have spotted even if you've been working on it for a little while. Or you think maybe this would work, and so you just quickly try it out on a certain area. So adding some more marks or increasing the tone or the temperature. making it warmer in certain areas or cooler in others. So you can see on the around the man's face we've got the blue, and then behind him we've got the orange. So we've got very contrasting areas, but the man's face I don't really touch at all. So we're defining a difference between the foreground, the man, and the background just there as well. So it's really fun. Right, I really did enjoy tinkering around with this. And you'll see that kind of orange that I've added in there down the bottom of the bar looks a little bit brown because the brown and the orange creates that brown. Sorry, the purple and the orange, or the violet and orange, creates that brown. Here, look, I'm just deepening some of the shadows around there with orange again. And then you'll see me in a few seconds work into the bar, maybe in a bit. And then just tinkering around with some of the finer details in there, although I wouldn't call them fine, of course. We're keeping the background much more abstract and soft. And here I decided to just play around with scratching in to wet paint. So that bit at the top there, I used the back of the brush and scratched it to create these lines and so forth. And there we go. Now this is where I started to think, well, actually I've got yellow and I've got blue, but if I've got more of the orange on one side, sorry, and more of the blue on the other, I can still add little accents to either side of the picture. And on this, now you can see me thinking, right, well, I don't want to draw the man into the background, but it's nice to add a few accents on his, say, jacket, or on some of the highlights, or his hat and so forth. So this is where I just sort of start to get a little bit more experimental with bringing in some of those colours from the background, but without overdoing it, I hope. And then this is just pure thick white applied to different parts of the features, just to pull some of those finer details out and make a bit more contrast between them. Anyway, so I really enjoyed this project. I enjoyed the city, and I enjoyed looking at atmospheric perspective. I hope you've enjoyed the lessons and will join us again in January when we start the next course. We're going to be looking at landscapes, hopefully, and animals alongside that. So we're going to mix those things up and do some more painting and have some more fun. So thank you for joining or watching if you're watching on YouTube, and be great to see you here again. Take care and have a lovely Christmas. Au revoir.